Welcome back. Just a word on the fixed income and currency part. The Federal Reserve's series of announcements that it will purchase a whole lot more of T-bills, I think $250 billion, and then corporate bonds and lend to mainstream are all likely to weigh on the dollar. We had the former Morgan Stanley Asia boss, Asia expert, and of course well-known economist Stephen Roach saying that a crash of the dollar is inevitable. And yet it went all the way to 96, the index, and has since recovered a bit. Samir Goel, the head of Asia macro strategy at Deutsche Bank, joins us now. Good morning, Samir. We are more interested, of course, in the dollar rupee and not in the dollar itself crashing. There have been some other reasons why the rupee should appreciate, like our trade surplus, trade deficit falling to as low as $3 billion in April. Do you think we are headed for a very strong Indian rupee?
Hi, Lata. So, look, our currency is a relative price. So I think in looking at the cross for dollar rupee, you cannot ignore the trend or outlook on the dollar, which at this stage remains a little bit less clear, partly because I think there are two separate narratives it can trade to. Some of the recent developments, including concerns about a second wave on the virus, could potentially bring back a little bit of the safe haven bid or safe haven risk premium, if you might, which the dollar has very largely benefited from the start of the COVID crisis up until very recently. But on the other hand, and I think it's increasingly trading, which is at least our view, the global assets are trading increasingly to that differentiation story of how this health crisis will now plan out or map out differently in different geographies, and that would probably put U.S. at a disadvantage versus at least some of the other major developed centers, like, for example, Europe. So to that extent, I think it becomes a little less clear. Our view is still that we think the dollar is going to trade more negatively, so we are still a little bit more bearish on the dollar cycle from here. But it is true that will depend increasingly upon individual episodes of whether some of this risk aversion comes back. On the rupee itself, like you said, I think there are again multiple crosswinds to the rupee. The current account story, as well as a sort of build-up of strong reserve buffers, is something which is very positive. A strong FDI pipeline as well, very positive for the rupee. But on the other hand, I guess one is idiosyncratic stories now of late with the increase in the geopolitical risk premium, the fact that oil prices are now back up, and more generally the fact that I think India is still not cleared off the epi curve, and in fact that issue still remains a significant drag on the economic outlook for the country, still bear sort of more negatively on the rupee. So I think I'm biased towards the rupee being stronger, but there are very strong cross currents on the rupee for now.
Okay, so it would help if you gave we were asking about bonds as well, but on the rupee, if you can give some levels. And more importantly, one thought the way in which the US is printing dollars and getting deeper and deeper into debt, the rupee will strengthen as you were discussing because of the dollar weakness. That also was expected to lead to a lot of flows towards emerging markets in general. Yet for the last 5 days or 6 days, we have seen FII outflows in India. Any color on that?
No, I think you make a very good point, and I think that goes back to the idea that emerging markets, and particularly emerging market FX is ultimately has this significant beta to growth. It's a growth asset class, and if what we need to see is this dollar weakness take place in a risk-positive, equity-positive, growth-positive environment, that correlation remains key to where emerging market currencies within general trade, and that includes for the rupee as well. And like you said, even though we have seen a significant pickup in the emerging market duration as an asset class or rates as an asset class over the last 2 or 3 months, the emerging market FX has still not necessarily picked up in a substantial way, and we haven't really seen a return of flows to emerging market local as an asset class. India remains very much a part of that same story. So, like I said, I think a bearish dollar trend, if it resumes and if it's kind of more driven by an end to U.S. exceptionalism, I think we should be able to trade dollar rupee down to, I would argue, below 75, but it remains to some extent more predicated on the broader dollar trend than necessarily the India story in itself, which, as I said, has got both positives and negatives at this point.
When you talk about the negatives, Sameer, you mentioned that there is this FII outflow that we're seeing. In fact, for 5 days now, foreign investors have been selling out of India. Apart from that, there's also the Indo-China border tensions that have put the lid on any kind of gains in risky assets. How does all of this feature into the move on the rupee? I mean, we've seen the rupee weaken for 4 days now. Do you expect some more weakness in the very near term?
So as you said, I think, look, the clearest form or the biggest factor driving or the outlook for a weaker rupee would largely come from the fact that the trajectory on where the trough in the cycle is for India is still relatively unclear, because it's not very clear as to where the end to this health crisis will necessarily be and how long it will continue to extract an economic cost, which in turn then means it's not very clear as to how much more policy stimulus will be required and how that bears down. And given the limitation on sort of fiscal capacity, there is obviously an excessive amount of burden which is taken by monetary policy in that respect, and that continues to be a negative drag for the rupee. In addition to that, like you said, idiosyncratic factors like risk premium on the India-China border issues and particularly sort of the FII outflows also tend to be negative. We have the positive side as well in terms of the current account now moving into potentially, flat to even surplus territory, and we have very strong sort of external backdrop in terms of strong reserves, which provide for a good buffer, especially versus other EMs. So like I said, several cross currents biased more towards dollar rupee downside, but like I said, it tends to be predicated a lot more on the broader dollar trend as well.
So you would say 74.50, 76.50. I mean, what's your range?
Like I said, a break below 75, I think, will be able to establish us into the 73, 75 range, but that requires some of the combination of the positive factors to play itself through.
Okay. A word on the bonds as well. Where do you think they are headed? After all, a stronger rupee as well as crude prices not really flying away is helpful.
I think the outlook for the bond story is, of course, predicated on two things. One, as to the RBI policy outlook, which seems increasingly better baked into prices in the market. But I think still there remains the incremental issue of whether the price point on absorbing liquidity is further brought down through maybe a special deposit facility and so forth, and whether that will make it the carry appeal for bonds and therefore the term premium more attractive. I'm still biased in that direction to think that there will be more which will need to be done by the central bank, and therefore the rates are likely heading lower. We think we should be able to get to the 5-quarter, 5-half range on the 10-year by the end of the year, but that's potentially a 6 to 9 month period, and it will then require greater clarity on RBI's participation in bridging the demand gap on bonds. That still remains an issue.
5-quarter is quite mouth-watering. I mean, not everyone is speaking so clearly about a 5-quarter coming. You would mean RBI should directly monetize, then it comes? Or it should announce an OMO program?
I think it's about bridging the gap. Now, whether that happens through a structured program of secondary market purchases like OMOs or does through participation in primary auctions, I think the important thing is to get that clarity on how that demand gap will be bridged. And which is why I said this is going to be predicated on when that clarity actually comes, and possibly a sort of a 6 to 9 month issue rather than necessarily something which is coming within the near term. All
right. Sameer Goel, we are heading into the equity market open. Thank you very much indeed for joining us with your thoughts both on the rupee and the bond market. We have to put on the commodity cues as well on an important day like this. Manisha Gupta is waiting by.
Lata, thank you for that. Well, on one side, you have the IMF warning about the global economy, and the other side, the US Fed also says that significant uncertainty about the timing and the strength of US recovery, and that exactly is the theme that's weighing onto the commodity markets. So the crude oil prices, which gained 5% in the New York session yesterday, have seen some profit taking come in for the Asian markets right now. There also is the IEA monthly report, which says that for 2020, they're looking at a demand growth of 91.7 million barrels, but next year could be better, but the pre-COVID levels would only be seen perhaps by 2022. In the meanwhile, you also have seen supply cuts continuing. For the month of May, the expectation is 12 million barrels per day of supplies getting out of the markets. So there is support into the markets, but the overall macro, the economic recovery is still in doldrums, and that keeps prices in check. The other sector which hasn't opened so well today is the metal prices. While yesterday was a good day, but today we have seen 0.5% to 0.25% of a decline come in for LME and Shanghai as well.
Okay.